You're listening to Chesterton Radio, broadcasting from the little station on Commercial Street in Atchison, Kansas. Stories, ideas, wonder. And now, from the common room.
Imagine your neighborhood's most beloved, harmless grandfather figure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the man who knows absolutely everyone's name.
Oh, yeah. The guy who helps lost kids find their way home.
Exactly. The one who essentially serves as the moral center of gravity for your entire community. Now, I want you to imagine him being gunned down in cold blood on a Sunday afternoon.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. And not in some dark, dangerous alleyway, but right in the middle of a crowded, everyday local cinema.
It's unthinkable, really.
It is. And that specific shock, that complete and utter violation of the social contract, was the cultural earthquake that completely rattled 1950s Britain.
It really did.
So we're taking a deep dive into The Blue Lamp today, tracing its journey from a legendary 1950 Ealing Studios film to that gripping 1965 BBC Sunday night play adaptation you brought to our attention, and exploring the massive cultural footprint it left behind.
It's a huge footprint, honestly.
It really is. And since you asked us to unpack these sources today, we decided to actually get out of the studio. You can probably hear the ambient roar of the traffic. And I think there's a siren a minute ago in the background.
Yeah, plenty of cars going by right now.
Right, because we're broadcasting on the road. We're walking the streets of West London, specifically navigating around Paddington Green and making our way down the Harrow Road.
And, walking these specific streets, it really grounds the entire conversation in a physical reality. Because this environment right here, this is the crucible where our story takes place.
The actual ground zero.
Exactly. And the central question we need to dissect today, pulling from all the articles and scripts you've compiled for us, is whether the Blue Lamp functions simply as a standard police procedural like, just a mechanical cops and robbers chase, or if it operates on a much deeper level. We're looking at this profound, almost philosophical exploration of what happens when a society constructed entirely on unwritten rules of trust and mutual respect suddenly encounters a traumatized post-war generation that flatly refuses to acknowledge those rules even exist.
I mean, to understand that refusal, we really have to look at the voices in that 1965 Sunday night play you just listened to.
Oh, absolutely.
Particularly Ian McShane's vocal performance as the violent youth, Tom Riley.
He was so good in that.
So good. And McShane, he doesn't play Riley as a standard criminal who's just, looking for a quick payday. He plays him as a complete sociopath.
Yeah, there's a real edge to it.
You hear it immediately in the opening sequence at the jewelry shop in the East End. Mr. and Mrs. Jordan, they're just this elderly couple trying to sleep. And when Riley and his accomplice, Spud, break in, Riley's dialogue, he tells the old man, "Show your trap, mister. You might get hurt."
It's chilling.
It's delivered with this twitchy, barely contained rage. There is zero deference to age or common decency. I mean, he operates with just complete contempt for the established order.
Well, and the radio play uses that domestic intrusion to immediately establish the stakes, right? By contrasting two completely opposing temporal rhythms.
How do you mean?
So on one hand, you have the police, officers like Jock McLaren walking his beat, circling the block, basically just counting the hours until the end of his shift.
Right, the routine.
Yeah, the institutional life of the police is depicted as weary, highly regulated, and very cyclical. It's a rhythm of endurance. But then, violently puncturing that slow institutional metronome, you have the manic, unpredictable acceleration of Riley.
Right, the pacing of the audio play really makes you feel the claustrophobia of a system that is fundamentally unequipped to handle a threat moving at this new erratic velocity.
Exactly. The system just can't keep up.
And that clash of rhythms is exactly why the traditional, rules of the game break down. We see the old rules so clearly in the scene where the young recruit, PC Andy Crawford, gets his first arrest.
Oh, Nancy, the local drunk.
Yes, Nancy. The older officers, they process her almost like they're participating in a familiar stage play.
They've done it 100 times.
1,000 times. They banter with her. They know exactly how she's going to react when they search her for her pawn tickets, and she knows the exact line she's supposed to deliver back to them.
It's a completely closed ecosystem with established boundaries. Both sides know their parts.
Right. But Riley steps into this ecosystem playing in an entirely different game. He isn't playing chess, where both sides respect the grid and the movement restrictions. Riley walks up and just starts playing rugby on the chessboard.
That's a great way to put it.
The horror for the police isn't just that he's violent, it's that he simply doesn't recognize the board at all.
And We have to trace the origins of that chessboard back to the source material. The 1950 Ealing film, directed by Basil Dearden and written by T.E.B. Clarke.
Clarke is such a crucial figure in this.
He really is. His background is key here. Because he wasn't just a screenwriter, he had actually served as a war reserve constable.
Right, he walked the beat.
He did. He understood the granular administrative reality of police work, and that injected the script with this unprecedented level of operational authenticity.
Which audiences weren't used to seeing.
Not at all. That authenticity helped turn the film into an absolute phenomenon. I mean, it became the highest-grossing British film of 1950 and even won the BAFTA for Best British Film.
Wow, I didn't realize it won the BAFTA.
Yeah, it was massive. But the true genius lay in the casting, bringing in Jack Warner as PC George Dixon to basically embody the traditional order, and then Dirk Bogarde as Tom Riley to represent the total disruption of that order.
Jack Warner played Dixon as the ultimate anchor of the community, right? Nearing retirement, steady, singing at his daughter's wedding. He was the nation's dad.
Yeah, very paternal.
And then Dirk Bogarde, in what was really his breakthrough role, played Riley as this leather-jacketed, gun-toting spiv.
Which, for a modern listener, we should probably define what a spiv actually is.
Yeah, that term doesn't really get used anymore.
No, it's very period-specific. A spiv wasn't just a generic crook. It was a very specific post-war archetype in Britain. They were these flashy, black market opportunists who thrived by exploiting the rationing system.
Because rationing was still severely restricting everyday life in 1950.
Exactly. So Bogarde brought this physical, restless menace to the role. He wasn't a gentleman thief in a tuxedo, He was a desperate byproduct of a completely ruined economy.
Which is fascinating because the socioeconomic conditions of 1950s Britain are basically the invisible engine driving Riley's character.
Oh, 100%. You have to remember, this is a youth generation that grew up amidst the absolute devastation of the Blitz.
Right, sleeping in tube stations.
Yeah, they spent their formative years huddled underground while their cities were literally reduced to rubble above them.
It's unbelievable trauma.
It is. They watched the older generation plunge the world into catastrophic violence, and what followed? Years of severe austerity and rationing.
So from Riley's perspective, the moral authority of the older generation is entirely bankrupt.
Exactly. Why would he submit to the gentle, paternal authority of a neighborhood Bobby when the institutional authority of the state had delivered nothing but trauma and deprivation his entire life?
Wow.
Riley is the physical manifestation of that post-war alienation.
Which makes the physical setting of the film and our current location right now so vital. Because we are walking down Harrow Road right now, and let me tell you, the landscape has been violently altered since 1950.
It really is a different world.
The original Paddington Green police station, the one with its iconic blue lamp, is completely gone. And the Harrow Road Coliseum Cinema, which is the actual site of Dixon's murder in the film, demolished in 1956.
It's crazy how fast they paved over it.
Literally paved over it. We are currently standing under a massive concrete pillar of the Marylebone flyover, which physically covers the world George Dixon patrolled.
And trying to map the geography of the film onto this modern concrete infrastructure, it's just jarring. But it highlights just how rapidly this environment was changing, even back then.
And the director, Basil Dearden, he recognized that. He knew the shifting landscape of London was as critical to the narrative as any human character.
He really did. And he made a revolutionary decision for Ealing Studios, because Ealing typically preferred the controlled, predictable environment of sound stages.
Right, it's easier to shoot on a set.
Much easier. But Dearden dragged his heavy camera equipment out into the actual war-ravaged streets of inner West London.
Wow.
He shot in Paddington, Westbourne Park, and all around Ladbroke Grove. This wasn't some pristine Hollywood backlot. It was a scarred, gritty reality that audiences immediately recognized as their own daily environment.
You can really see that commitment to reality in the extended car chase towards the end of the film.
Oh, that chase is incredible.
Right. They tear through Delamere Terrace down Portobello Road, and they eventually end up in a foot chase inside the White City Stadium.
Right, during an actual event, too.
Yeah, but Dearden didn't just point a camera at the streets. He really manipulated the visual language to heighten the thematic clash between these two worlds. How exactly did he achieve that contrast between Dixon's world and Riley's world on a technical level?
Well, he essentially stitched two distinct cinematic languages together.
Okay, how so?
So when Dearden shoots the underworld, Riley's hideouts, the smoky pool halls, the claustrophobic amusement arcades. He utilizes the grammar of film noir.
Lots of shadows.
Exactly. He employs high-contrast lighting, harsh shadows, and these low camera angles that make the spaces feel dangerous. They feel psychologically unstable and honestly very distinctly Americanized in their aesthetic.
Like a Hollywood gangster picture.
Yeah. But conversely, when he films the police station and the daylight streets of London, he pivots completely to social realism.
It feels almost like a documentary in those scenes.
Exactly. The lighting is flatter, the depth of field is deeper, which allows the audience to see the mundane details of everyday life operating in the background.
It's an unvarnished, objective lens.
Yes. It forces the audience to view the police not as action heroes, but as an integrated component of the working class environment.
And that objective, almost clinical lens is weaponized so brilliantly right after the film's most traumatic moment.
The shooting.
Yeah. When Dixon is shot, the film doesn't linger on this melodramatic death scene with swelling strings. It executes a really jarring structural pivot.
It cuts away completely.
It does. Dearden cuts to a rapid-fire montage using Dawn actors. We see real police operators working the switchboards, coordinating a massive dragnet.
Real people doing their real jobs.
Exactly. And then we cut to a real functioning National Health Service surgery where actual medical professionals are operating on Dixon. It suddenly feels like an instructional documentary.
It's such a strange choice on paper.
Why do that, though? Why strip away the cinematic illusion at the exact moment the audience is most emotionally vulnerable?
Because that emotional vulnerability required an immediate institutional countermeasure.
A countermeasure?
Think about it. By killing Dixon, Dearden destroyed the audience's primary symbol of safety and moral order. The psychological shock to a 1950 audience cannot be overstated. It was huge.
Like Psycho killing off Janet Leigh a decade early.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
So Dearden had to provide a safety net. By showcasing the cold, efficient mechanics of the newly minted NHS and the organized response of the police force, the film essentially tells the audience, don't panic.
The system works.
Right. It says, the individual father figure may fall, but the machinery of the state is robust, modernized, and entirely capable of absorbing this trauma. It transfers the audience's faith from the vulnerable individual to the invulnerable institution.
But that transfer of faith only works because the loss of the individual is so deeply felt by the audience.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's examine the mechanics of that murder scene for a second, because it perfectly encapsulates the failure condition of policing by consent.
It's a tough scene to watch.
It is. Dixon corners Riley outside the cinema. Riley is backed against a wall, panicked, aiming a revolver directly at him. And Dixon, operating entirely on the assumptions of his ecosystem, doesn't draw a weapon.
He doesn't even flinch.
No, he just walks toward him, employing his paternal authority, saying something like, "Come on now, put it away." He treats a lethal threat like a juvenile misdemeanor.
He assumes the sheer weight of his moral standing will de-escalate the situation.
Right. And Riley's response, shooting him at point-blank range, is the terrifying realization that consent only functions when both parties agree to participate.
Precisely.
When one party completely opts out of the social contract, the Dixon model fails catastrophically.
And that catastrophic failure, that's what brings us to the core ideological debate surrounding the film. You know, academic Charles Barr famously argued that the blue lamp constructs a highly conservative daydream.
A daydream, that's a strong word for it.
It is, but he backs it up. The most glaring evidence of this daydream occurs in the aftermath of the shooting. The entire community rallies, which, okay, is plausible.
Sure, people like them.
But then, the criminal underworld itself decides that Riley has crossed an unforgivable line.
Right, the other criminals turn on him.
Yes. The petty thieves, the local bookmakers, the grifters, they all suddenly decide Riley is a rotten apple who violated the unwritten rules by killing a decent copper.
Into a stretch.
It is. They actually utilize tic-tac men, you know, the illegal bookmakers who used complex hand signals at dog tracks to communicate odds.
I remember reading about them in the sources.
Right. So the film has these illegal gamblers using their secret signals to help the police corner Riley.
Okay, I see where you're going with this, and I know Charles Barr views that alliance as pure fantasy. But I think writing it off as just a conservative daydream kind of misses the functional reality of Dixon's policing style.
Really? You don't think an alliance between hardened criminals and the police to avenge a neighborhood Bobby is just a nostalgic yearning for a pre-war innocence that never existed? Because to me, it posits this mythical, coherent national community where even the lawbreakers recognize and submit to the moral authority of the state. It's a fairy tale.
I think the cinematic execution of it, like the criminals literally signaling the police at the dog track, yes, that is heightened for dramatic effect. Absolutely.
Very heightened.
But the underlying principle, Dixon's methodology, is grounded in fact. Dixon operates as an analog intelligence network.
An analog intelligence network. Okay, explain that.
His authority isn't a fairy tale. It's an immense, highly localized data collection system. Look at his interactions in the script. When a little girl named Queenie finds a discarded gun, she tells Dixon her dad doesn't like policemen.
Right, the dad's anti-cop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Dixon doesn't pull rank or lecture her. He talks to her on her level, he earns her trust, and he extracts the location of the weapon.
Plays the long game.
He does. He knows the routines, the grudges, and the baseline behaviors of absolutely everyone on his beat. He doesn't need a firearm because his weapon is community data. When the baseline shifts, he knows something is wrong. That level of embedded trust wasn't a myth. It was a practical, functional mechanism of maintaining order.
Okay, that is a really compelling way to frame it. Thinking of him as an analog intelligence network rather than just simple paternalism.
Right. He's actually highly effective.
It definitely reframes his whole tea-drinking coziness as a highly sophisticated form of community surveillance.
Exactly.
However, and there is a however here, even if we accept the efficacy of that network, the film itself seems conflicted about where its true sympathies lie.
What do you mean?
Well, while the narrative overtly champions Dixon's moral framework, the promotional machinery behind the film betrayed a deep, undeniable fascination with the very force that destroyed it.
Oh, the marketing. Yes, this is perhaps the most subversive element we uncovered in your sources.
It's wild.
Let's talk about the original promotional poster for the film. It was designed by James Boswell, and it's preserved in the British Film Institute archives. Now, typically, in 1950, film marketing prioritized star power and moral reassurance. In fact, the rank organization which distributed the film, they were terrified that the marketing lacked star value. So you would fully expect this massive, noble portrait of Jack Warner in his police helmet just dominating the poster.
But Boswell's design completely subverts that expectation. It radically marginalizes the police presence.
It does.
Jack Warner's George Dixon doesn't even appear on the poster.
He's the main character, and he's not even on it.
Right. Instead, the visual real estate is entirely surrendered to the criminal element. The artwork features Dirk Bogarde, his accomplice, and a young blonde woman lurking around pinball machines in this hazy, oppressive amusement arcade.
And the color psychology of that poster is aggressive. The BFI notes highlight how the composition is saturated in these muddy, rusty red tones.
Very striking.
Very. And the red visually encodes danger, illicit sexuality, and the visceral thrill of the underworld. Meanwhile, the titular blue lamp, the literal symbol of justice, safety, and the state, is reduced to this faint, almost pathetic glow relegated to the distant background.
The red roguery in the foreground completely overpowers the blue light of institutional order.
It's fascinating. Did Ealing Studios inadvertently make the criminal underworld more charismatic than the forces of law and order?
I don't think it was inadvertent. Ealing's advertising executives, S. John Woods and Manja Danishevsky, they were known for commissioning serious artists who understood visual rhetoric.
So they knew what they were doing.
Oh, yeah. Boswell clearly identified that the kinetic energy of the film did not belong to the police. It belonged to the delinquent. By elevating Bogarde's character in the marketing, they risked pulling the film off its hegemonic axis.
And we should probably clarify what that means in this context, disrupting the hegemonic axis.
Right, sorry. It means destabilizing the dominant moral framework the film is supposedly built upon.
Got it.
The narrative tells the audience to mourn Dixon and despise Riley, but the visual language and the marketing. They suggest that Riley's world, the pool halls, the leather jackets, the speed, the violence, is far more alluring than the drab, bureaucratic reality of the police station.
Looking at this poster, I really get the sense Ealing Studios knew exactly what they were doing.
They were selling tickets.
They were selling the danger to get teenagers into the seats. They used Dixon purely as a Trojan horse to slip a gritty, violent thriller past the censors and the moral guardians of the era.
That's a great point.
Bogarde made rebellion look incredibly stylish in a country that was suffocating under the gray weight of post-war austerity. The youth culture in the film represented a total rejection of the system that had demanded endless sacrifice from the public.
But, the public psyche is complex.
How so?
Well, they might have been thrilled by Bogarde's rebellion in a darkened cinema, but they were deeply traumatized by the loss of the safety Dixon represented.
True, they still wanted that comfort.
Right. The collective anxiety over rising youth crime and social instability created this overwhelming demand for reassurance. The British public simply could not tolerate a reality where their ultimate symbol of protection was permanently erased.
And that collective psychological need birthed one of the most surreal events in television history.
Surreal is the only word for it, honestly.
It really is. Let's jump ahead to 1955. 5 years have passed since George Dixon was definitively murdered on the Harrow Road.
Shot point blank. Dead.
Dead. Autopsy. Gone. But the BBC is suddenly facing an existential threat from the launch of the ITV commercial network. They need guaranteed viewership, and they need a hero the public implicitly trusts.
So what do?
Their solution. They simply resurrected George Dixon from the dead for a brand new television series, Dixon of Dock Green.
Just brought him right back.
There was no elaborate science fiction explanation, no prequel timeline. The man who took a bullet to the chest and died on an operating table in 1950 just walked on the television screens in 1955, completely fine, ready for his shift.
It is an extraordinary testament to the character's archetypal power. I mean, the audience just accepted it without question.
They welcomed it.
They did, and this wasn't some brief experimental revival. Dixon of Dock Green became a foundational pillar of British broadcasting.
How long did it run?
It ran for an astonishing 21 years. It concluded in 1976 after 432 episodes.
Well, 432 episodes.
Yeah, and Jack Warner inhabited the role for the entire duration, remaining a serving police officer on screen until he was 80 years old.
80.
Completely ignoring the real-world mandatory retirement age of 55, by the way.
Oh, totally.
In his later years, he was virtually immobile. He reportedly relied on beasting therapy to manage severe arthritis. Yet the audience's demand for his specific brand of paternal authority never wavered.
The television show did make a few geographical adjustments, though. They moved Dixon from Paddington to a fictional station in the East End called Dock Green.
Right.
And they introduced a framing device that became instantly legendary.
Oh, the intro.
Every single episode opened with Dixon walking straight up to the camera, breaking the fourth wall, offering a salute, and delivering the line, "Evening all."
Evening all.
That phrase cemented itself in the British lexicon as a weekly, direct-to-camera promise of stability.
And the creator of the series, Ted Willis, architected that stability with extreme precision.
What was his approach?
He deliberately avoided the tropes of traditional detective fiction. There were no eccentric super sleuths unraveling locked room mysteries in country manners.
No Agatha Christie stuff.
None of that. Willis focused relentlessly on the granular working-class reality of the uniformed branch. He wanted to emphasize human beings navigating community friction rather than focusing on the mechanics of complex crimes.
Willis understood that true community policing is largely administrative and social work.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lost dog, a domestic dispute, a runaway teenager, a stolen bicycle. It was about mediation.
Right.
Willis argued that the average beat cop might serve an entire career without ever encountering a homicide. The show functioned as a weekly reinforcement of the social contract, demonstrating that minor fractures in the community could be repaired through empathy and routine.
It's a beautiful idea. However, as the 1950s bled into the 1960s and 1970s, the physical and cultural reality of Britain began to diverge sharply from the meticulously controlled environment of Dock Green.
You can feel it as we keep walking away from the Harrow Road towards the more modernized sections of West London here. The architecture changes, the pace changes.
It mirrors the shift in the television landscape perfectly. Dixon's methodology, relying on a quiet word and a cup of tea to resolve conflicts, it began to appear increasingly detached from the escalating violence and complexity of modern urban centers.
The evolution of the British police procedural maps the erosion of that post-war consensus so well. In 1962, Z-Cars debuted, which fundamentally altered the genre's DNA.
Completely changed the game.
It moved the action to the north of England and put the officers in patrol cars, physically separating them from the pedestrian beat that Dixon championed.
Right, they were isolated in the cars.
The officers in Z-Cars were cynical, they were flawed, and they were prone to anger. They dealt with domestic abuse, organized crime, and systemic poverty in a way that just shattered the Dock Green illusion.
And that transition accelerated dramatically in the 1970s with the Sweeney.
Oh, the Sweeney.
This was the antithesis of George Dixon. The Sweeney followed Jack Reagan and George Carter in the elite flying squad. These were plainclothes detectives roaring around London in Ford Granadas, basically functioning in a state of perpetual aggression.
Yeah, they drank heavily, ignored procedure, engaged in brutal fistfights, and regularly utilized firearms.
Placed adjacent to the Sweeney, George Dixon, standing under his glowing blue lamp, appeared to be a quaint relic of Victorian morality.
Critics were not kind.
No, television critics began to attack Dixon of Dock Green viciously. They labeled it a dangerous anachronism that was actively deceiving the public about the violent reality of law enforcement.
But the defense mounted by the creators is crucial here. Ted Willis, and notably Alan Plater, who, it's worth mentioning, actually wrote for the gritty, cynical Z-Cars, they fiercely defended the validity of Dixon.
Plater's defense is really interesting.
It is. Plater pointed out a massive hypocrisy in the criticism. He argued that it was fundamentally irresponsible to portray the police as constantly engaged in high-speed pursuits and lethal shootouts.
Right, because that's not real life either.
Exactly. Plater suggested that the Sweeney wasn't realism at all. It was an Americanized action fantasy draped in a British accent.
He's not wrong.
And Willis maintained that 80% of actual police work remained exactly what Dixon was doing. Paperwork, de-escalation, and routine community engagement.
And what often gets lost in the cultural memory of the show is that Dixon of Dock Green did, in fact, attempt to bridge the gap between its origins and modern realities.
They tried to update it.
They did. Because the BBC routinely wiped videotapes to save money back then, the vast majority of the 432 episodes are permanently lost.
Which is a tragedy.
It is. And that loss has calcified the show's reputation as purely cozy. But the surviving material from the 1970s reveals a significantly sharper edge.
Oh, like that phenomenal surviving episode from 1974.
Firearms are issued.
Yes, firearms were issued. It utterly dismantles the cozy stereotype. A gang of armed robbers is barricaded in a suburban house. Dixon, who is now a sergeant, is forced to authorize the deployment of firearms to his men.
Which is a huge deal.
And that includes his own son-in-law, Detective Inspector Andy Crawford. They execute this chaotic night raid, shots are exchanged in the darkness, and Crawford shoots a suspect dead.
And the aftermath of that shooting is what makes the episode so compelling, because it doesn't celebrate the violence. It instantly pivots into a rigid, claustrophobic internal investigation.
The bureaucracy comes down hard.
Exactly. External detectives from the Criminal Investigation Department arrive to interrogate every single officer involved, deeply scrutinizing the justification for lethal force.
It proves the series was capable of grappling with the profound moral and legal consequences of modern militarized policing. It wasn't entirely insulated from the trauma of the outside world.
It really is a tragedy that the archives were purged, because the loss of those nuanced episodes allowed Dixon to be flattened into a caricature.
Right, but that caricature is so deeply embedded in the cultural bedrock that it became a meta legacy. I mean, the ghost of George Dixon basically haunts every police drama that followed.
He became the inescapable archetype. Fictional police officers basically have to define themselves against him, either through emulation or violent rejection.
You see that haunting brilliantly realized in a 1988 satirical play we looked at called The Black and Blue Lamp.
That play is so bizarre.
The premise is absurd but highly effective. Tom Riley and PC Hughes from the 1950 film are somehow thrust through time into a hyper-violent, incredibly cynical 1980s TV cop show called The Filth.
Just a great title.
Watching these characters, who are operating on 1950s morality, try to navigate a world defined by rampant corruption, institutional brutality, and endless profanity. It's a masterclass in dissecting how drastically our societal expectations of the police had degraded.
And we see it again in the massive modern hit Ashes to Ashes.
Oh, definitely.
It's a show built entirely around a modern cop trapped in the policing culture of the 1980s. And in the final episode, when the existential truth of the character's purgatory is finally revealed, the creators deliberately recycle one of George Dixon's direct-to-camera closing monologues.
I remember that.
Dixon's bizarre, unexplained resurrection in 1955 perfectly mirrored the surreal, time-bending exploration of life, death, and institutional duty in Ashes to Ashes.
Dixon's enduring presence in the cultural subconscious proves that the anxieties the Blue Lamp attempted to soothe in 1950 have never truly been resolved, have they?
Not at all.
The tension between the desire for localized human authority and the terrifying reality of alienated violence is just a permanent feature of modern urban life.
Which brings us back to where we are standing right now, at the end of our walk.
It does. We were off the Harrow Road now, standing in a quieter, modernized square in West London. The physical evidence of George Dixon's world has been entirely erased, replaced by concrete and glass.
Not a blue lamp in sight.
No. But I want you to consider our initial question about the breakdown of unwritten rules and apply it to this modern environment. Today, it is effortless to dismiss the evening all philosophy of George Dixon as just a naive punchline. But look around this square. How is order maintained here now? It is maintained through algorithmic predictive policing, through a dense network of CCTV cameras tracking our movements, and through the implied threat of heavily militarized response units.
It's a surveillance state.
The analog intelligence network Dixon represented, where a police officer actually knew your family, knew your history, and understood the specific social dynamics of a single street, that has been completely replaced by cold, mechanical data collection.
Yeah, the human element is gone.
So we have to ask, is there something catastrophic that we have lost by abandoning Dixon's model? Has we sacrificed an authority rooted in profound familiarity and a shared sense of belonging in exchange for an authority based purely on anonymous surveillance and technological intimidation?
That's a profound question. And to take that provocation a step further, consider the modern equivalent of Tom Riley. The alienated, desperate youth of 1950 rebelled against a visible, human representative of the state. If that same traumatized youth were to walk into this square today, seeking to lash out against the system that marginalized him, would he even be able to locate a human authority figure to rebel against?
That's a chilling thought.
Or has the system of law and order become just as cold, distant, and mechanically unfeeling as the sociopathic criminal element the blue lamp warned us about all those decades ago?
It feels like the very institution designed to protect us from Tom Riley eventually adopted his total lack of empathy just to get the job done.
Exactly.
That is a very heavy thought to leave you with as we wrap up this deep dive on the road. Thank you for sharing these sources with us and prompting this exploration. From the streets of West London, this is The Common Room. Stories, ideas, wonder.